I will, boom, boom, boom. There we go. And it's really a pleasure, Bill, to have you with us. And I'm really excited about hearing your thoughts and insights on strategy into 2021. So, Bill Fischer, welcome.
Well, it's a great pleasure for me to be here. I have been looking forward to this, and I have to say that I feel very much a part of this community. You've made me feel very welcome. So when you talk about good friendship, I certainly, that's the way I think about it, Chris. I think that this has been one of the bright spots during 2020 to share some of the conversations taking part in strategy tools. And I see some familiar faces, or at least names, on the screen. So let me begin. What Chris has asked me to do is to very briefly talk about strategy into 2021. And I think in a sense, 2021 is a road marker. I think it's the beginning of the end of a world that's very familiar. When I looked at the scenarios Chris just put up, it occurs to me that I really have no idea which way we're going. I sort of agree with what he's saying, but there's so much opportunity for surprise. I woke up this morning, I'm living in New York at the moment. I woke up this morning to see election results that would have been unthinkable yesterday. And this is the election in Georgia. So good results, I might add. So I think that we live in a world that's fundamentally changing in so many ways. And that has a profound impact on the way we think about strategy. So what I want to do in the few minutes available is to get you to think about what does it mean organizationally, and what does it mean, because that's the unit of observation for where strategy takes place for most of us, and what does it mean to us personally. And what I want you to think about is, as we move away from the familiar, what is strategy, and what does the strategy process look like in a world of unknowns? How much of our strategy, if we're honest, both at the organizational level and the personal level, relies on the familiar, the rapidly disappearing familiar, and how important is expertise in our competitive positioning? And I think these questions really affect how we learn going into the future. And a lot of this was driven by some provocations that I took from the Drucker Forum just a few months ago. So this year, the Drucker Forum was run in Zoom, and I was a rapporteur for a session. I knew only one person in the panel, and what I discovered was, while the rapporteur's role is completely invisible, the job is demanding. You have to pay attention all the time, and it was an amazingly rewarding experience, because my panel spoke about a world where we acknowledge, we're past the denial phase, where we acknowledge that what's going to happen in the future is unknown, not unfamiliar, not uncertain. We're masters of the uncertain, but unknown. And that the primary triggers are going to be things that are basically surprises, or what the panel called accidents, events that have a small but finite probability of occurring. And we have to then adjust to that. And so the difference between an unknown and an uncertain is profound, okay? And it's hard to be prepared for anything that happens when we're dealing with unknowns, because familiarity is no longer something we can rely on. No prediction, we can't fall back on previous experiences. This is first for many of us. The COVID virus has many of the characteristics of the unknown. And you think about what that means for expertise. Think about how expertise has been challenged or denied over the last 9 or 10 months. Think about how assumptions, predictions, and inevitably strategy in dealing with the virus have performed. This is and it's not just the virus, right? It's next the climate. It's injustice. It's economic inequities. It's the maldistribution of wealth. All of these things seem to be taking on a greater degree of momentum as we go into the future. So relying on inertia is a bad way to base your strategy. And what I want you to think about in such a world where predictability is unavailable, what does leadership look like? And what is leadership's role? And what would it feel to work in an organization that faces such uncertainty? Let me just go back and make sure. Okay. How important are social skills where we have to operate in a very, very different and disaggregated fashion, and how is decision making going to face? And I think that much of what we're going to think about in the future is human conversation. How do we get ideas? How do we move those ideas? How do we respond to those ideas? How can we tell which ideas make sense and which don't? And how do we operationalize this? The panel that I was the rapporteur for, and I'm quoting them because they profoundly changed my thinking. They talked about unanticipation as a replacement for conventional strategy. So much of conventional strategy is based on anticipation. But if you can't anticipate, what does that mean for strategy? And I think unanticipation is a stunning term. It's consciously conceding that it's futile to pretend that we know what we're doing. So we need to rethink how we go about sensing the future and how we go about responding to it and how we go about leading in such a world. And what does it mean for me as a professional in the way in which I prize my expertise and continue to add to it? The panel suggested that what we do is treat both our organizations and our ecosystems as networks of sensors that are looking at weak signals of impending change or impending surprise. And remember that in a world of unknown unknowns, we might not even be able to know what signals we're looking for. And to welcome distractions rather than to suppress them, to insist that we and our network remain radically open so that we can get as many weak signals as possible so we can begin to sort out how we move forward, what we test and what we don't. You know, as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the former CEO of eBay, John Donahoe, who said, you know, there wasn't a moment during the 30 years that he was at eBay and before that, where he was certain that he was doing the right thing. There wasn't one moment where he was in the middle of all of this stuff and said, now I know it, now I understand it, now I figured it out. And I think Donahoe's remarkable candor is probably a precursor of what most of us will face in the future. Most of us will face where we adopt unanticipation either willingly or unwillingly because we can no longer trust our predictions and our forecasts or even our assumptions, where we can't plan what we can't imagine, and yet we can't imagine what's coming next. Where strategy is replaced by tactics because the strategy that we would relied on, and now I'm thinking about Porter-esque modeling and things like that, no longer is reliable. And so we have to rely on small chances and small bets and learning quickly and moving information much faster than we've ever done before. Where value chains, which are prized for their dependability, become less valuable than ecosystems where spontaneity reigns, where surprises are constant, where we look at partners for variance enlargement rather than variance reduction. Different world, huh? The strategy story becomes the ex post rationalization of tactics that are chosen. It's not the grand strategy that we've known for so long. That was important for a period of time that is no longer relevant to where we'll be in the future. Where learning then becomes more important than knowing because knowledge has such a short shelf life. And where sharing the fast movement of lessons learned becomes more important than holding them behind barriers of academic diplomas and expertise and things like that, simply because we can't afford to slow down the flow of ideas. So I think this really changes the way we think about organizations. It certainly changes the way I think about strategy, changes the way we think about leadership. The leader doesn't know everything any longer. It's impossible. So at a personal level, it changes so much of the way I think about my own role, my own life. I think I have to become an activist learner. I think I have to be on the search for new ideas all the time. I think I have to think about where I'm learning from at the moment. Does it work? And what's missing? What am I not seeing? But I think we also live, thanks to working at home, at a time when learning opportunities are exploding. And I have to be moving as fast as the opportunities are in order to stay ahead. I think I have to engage and experiment with new sources of ideas. We're doing that right now, new conversational partners. And I have to identify and adapt, or at least try new behaviors of learning so that I remain relevant professionally. And I think I always have to ask, how close to the edge am I getting? Am I getting close to the edge so that I see the new ideas that are coming up or not? And so, you know, if I think about strategy tools in myself, this fall, when I was in the transformation enterprise program, what I found so useful was being in collaborative sessions with experienced professionals talking about what a transformation journey looks like, being able to have a guided roadmap to have a more effective conversation, and common vocabulary frameworks that worked, hugely valuable. If conversations are so important, we need tools like this. I told Chris many times now that this starters map, which looks at who is supporting you in new initiatives and who recognizes the change and who you can count on as being an ally, is something that I really wish I had 20 years ago when I ran an organization and really dropped the ball in building constituents around a transformation agenda. Now we have tools to work with this. This is profoundly important. And of course, the other thing that's been so important to me this past year is the opportunity to work with not only Chris, but David, who will be coming on this morning, and David Lansfield, and Scott Newton, so many really interesting people. Literally every Thursday we would sit around and learn from each other. And these are the types of tools that I think are so important. So let me recapitulate very quickly. My solution is to learn more, not less. And it's so easy to learn less by not being an activist learner. So what I want to think about is, what I'd like you to think about as an experiment is, over the next day or so, think about, what do you need to learn? When you hear people talk about the future or the present, how well are you doing? What sort of sources of information are they using? And what sort of behaviors do you need to adapt to be able to move in the future? If we all become activist learners, then the path into the unknown won't be as threatening as it appears to be or forbidding, not threatening, as it appears to be at the moment. So thank you very much for bearing with me for the last few minutes, but I hope you think about, how do I make this program part of my agenda for change in the year? Thanks, Chris.
Bill, the pleasure is all ours. So we'll give a round of virtual applause.
Okay.
And you know, Bill, I have to tell you that, just like thinking back to that conversation we had in that restaurant in Switzerland at the IMD conference, and I just love listening to you sharing your insights and stories. So thank you very, very, very much.
Great pleasure. Thank you for including me in this.
And of course, Bill, you know, looking into next year, I'm not going to be leaving Norway, and you are, you know, hopefully not going to be leaving, you know, your apartment in New York anytime soon. So I hope to see you in more events and you know, learning avenues, big and small.
I'll be there. Just ask anytime.